The night shift ended at 7 in the morning, but the hospital never really ended. It just changed nurses. I handed off my 4 patients to the day shift. One feverish 2-year-old with an ear infection, a 7-year-old asthma admission who'd coded twice overnight and was finally stable, a newborn withdrawing from something her mother had taken, and a teenager with a broken leg from a car accident who'd asked me at 4 a.m. if she was going to die. I told her no. I was right most of the time. I walked to my car in the parking garage with my scrub top untied and my shoes in my hand because my feet hurt too bad to keep them on. The Civic started on the second try, which was normal, and I drove west toward Lakewood as the sun came up gray over the lake. October in Cleveland. The sky looked like a dirty sponge. My apartment was on the second floor of a brick building that had been built in 1952 and updated approximately never. The radiators clanked, the windows stuck, and the kitchen faucet dripped unless you turned it just right. It was mine. Every square foot of it was mine, paid for with shifts that started at 7 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m., with no one calling me selfish for taking them. Tasha was on my couch when I walked in. She'd pulled a double in the ER and let herself in with the key I'd given her. And she was asleep on top of the covers with her mouth open and a half-eaten container of fried rice on the coffee table. I put a blanket over her and went to take a shower. I slept until 4 in the afternoon. When I woke up, Tasha was gone. She'd left a note on a napkin that said, "Took the rice, left you half, don't wake up dead." I ate the rice cold at the kitchen counter and checked my phone. 3 text messages from my charge nurse about the schedule. An email from my student loan servicer. Nothing else. I had that night off. I changed into jeans and a sweatshirt, took a load of scrubs to the laundry room in the basement, and came back up to start coffee. It was 5:30. The light through the kitchen window was that thin, tired gold it got this time of year, and I was standing at the counter stirring my coffee when my phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. Area code 440. I almost didn't answer. I got calls from 440 numbers sometimes. Doctor's offices, bill collectors, the occasional wrong number. But I'd grown up under that area code, and something in my chest tightened, the way a dog's ears prick up at a sound it can't place. I picked up. "Hello? Silence." Then a woman's voice. "Megan?" I didn't say anything. I knew that voice. I'd heard it in my dreams for 5 years. Sometimes angry, sometimes crying, sometimes just saying my name the way she used to when I was little and she'd tuck me in. It was older now, thinner, like it had been left out in the weather. "Megan, it's your mother." I put the coffee spoon down. It clattered against the mug. "I know who it is. Baby, please don't hang up. Just listen for 1 minute. Please, baby." She hadn't called me baby in 5 years. The last thing she'd said to my face was, "Don't come back until you've learned some gratitude." What do you want, Karen? Using her first name was a habit I'd built deliberately, like laying bricks one at a time. She inhaled. I could hear something in the breath, shaking, like she was cold or crying or both. "It's Erin. She's sick." My sister's name landed in the kitchen like a stone in still water. I hadn't heard anyone say it out loud in 5 years. Aunt Donna mentioned her sometimes, carefully, the way you mention a dog that died. "What kind of sick?" "Her kidneys. They're failing. She's been on dialysis for 6 months. The doctors say she needs a transplant. A family member is the best chance. Megan, you're her sister. You need to get tested." I leaned against the counter. The radiator clanked in the living room. Outside, a car door slammed. "How long have you known?" "Known what? How long has she been sick?" A pause. 8 months. They diagnosed her in February. 8 months. I said it flat. 8 months she's been sick, and you're calling me now. We were trying to handle it ourselves. We didn't want to bother you with, bother me. I closed my eyes. "You didn't want to bother me, but now you need a kidney, so you called." "Megan, let me think about it. Baby, please, she's dying." I said let me think about it. I hung up. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't yell. I set it down on the counter very carefully, like it was something that might break. And then I stood there in my kitchen with my coffee getting cold and my hands shaking so bad I had to put them in my sweatshirt pockets. Tasha came back an hour later with beer and a pizza. She took one look at me and said, "What happened?" I told her. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table and didn't interrupt. When I finished, she opened 2 beers and pushed one across the table. "You're not actually considering this," she said. It wasn't a question. I don't know what I'm considering. "Megan, they threw you out with a backpack. They took your nursing school money. They didn't call you for 5 years, and now they want your kidney. That's not family. That's an organ harvest with a guilt trip." I almost smiled. Almost. That night, after Tasha went home, I sat on the couch with my phone in my hand. I opened my call history. The unknown number was there. Karen's call. 5:47 p.m. 4 minutes 12 seconds. But there were more. I scrolled back. 14 calls from the same number over the past 3 weeks. All muted. All ignored. I didn't remember hearing any of them. I'd been sleeping after night shifts, or working, or just not answering numbers I didn't know. The earliest call had a voicemail. I hadn't checked. I pressed play and put the phone to my ear. Karen's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it, recorded 3 weeks ago. "Megan, please." "It's Erin." The voicemail ended. I sat in the dark and listened to the radiators clank and a siren go by on Detroit Avenue. And I thought about my sister, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, lying in a hospital bed somewhere with tubes in her chest, and my mother's voice in my ear saying, "Please." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed and listened to the radiators bang, and the people upstairs walk around, and somewhere around 3 in the morning, I stopped trying and turned on the light. The memory came anyway. It always did when I let my guard down. I was 18. I'd just gotten my acceptance letter to Cuyahoga Community College's nursing program. 2 years, prerequisites done, scholarship for half the tuition. I'd been saving for the other half since I was 16, working the register at Marco's Pizza and babysitting for the Hendersons down the street, plus the $3,000 Grandma Sullivan had left me in a coffee can before she died. $12,000, enough to get through the first year without loans. I went to the bank on a Tuesday. The teller, Mrs. Patterson, who'd known me since I was a kid, looked at her screen and then looked at me and said, "Honey, this account was closed last week." Closed. By my mother, who was on the account because I'd opened it at 16. I drove home and found Karen at the kitchen table with the bank slip in front of her. She didn't deny it. "The money went to Erin," she said, like she was telling me the weather. "She's getting married," Tyler proposed. "They need it for the wedding and the deposit on an apartment. Erin's 17, 18 in March. She's ready, Megan. You know how she is. She needs stability, and I don't? You're the strong one." Dennis said it from the doorway where he'd been standing the whole time. He had his arms crossed, his work boots still on, like he'd come in from the garage just to say his piece. "You'll figure it out. You always do. Erin needs someone to take care of her. That's my money." "I worked for that money. We're your family," Karen said. "Family takes care of each other, then take care of me." Neither of them said anything. Karen looked at the table. Dennis looked at the wall. The silence was the answer. That night, Dennis told me to leave. Not in a shouting way. In a tired way, like I was a problem he'd decided not to fix. "You're 18 now," he said. "You've got your health and your strong back. Go make your own way. This house is for Erin now, until she and Tyler get on their feet." I packed one backpack. I didn't take much. 3 shirts, a pair of jeans, my wallet, my phone charger. I stood in the doorway of the room I'd shared with Erin for 16 years and looked at her side of the room. The pink curtains, the stuffed animals she'd never put away. She wasn't home. She was with Tyler. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out with $47 in my wallet and slept on a friend's couch for the first month. Now, 5 years later, I sat up in bed at 3:15 in the morning and stared at the wall of my apartment in Lakewood, where every piece of furniture was mine and every bill had my name on it. And I thought about my mother's voice on the phone saying Erin's kidneys were failing. The calls kept coming. Karen called twice on Saturday, once crying, once angry. Dennis left a voicemail that started with, "Megan, this is your father," and ended with, "I don't know how you can live with yourself, letting your own sister die." I didn't answer any of them. I went to work Saturday night and did my job, bathed a preemie, calmed a terrified 5-year-old before an IV, held a mother's hand while the doctor talked about her son's fever, and I didn't tell a single person what was happening. Aunt Donna called on Sunday. She didn't waste time. "I know your mother called you," she said. "She did. Are you going to do it?" "I don't know yet." She was quiet for a minute. "Erin's been sick since February, Megan. They didn't tell you because they knew you'd be angry they waited this long. She started dialysis in April. She goes 3 times a week, 4 hours each time. It's been hard on her." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because she asked me not to. She said you'd already given enough." That stopped me. "She said that?" "She did. She's not the same girl you remember, Megan. None of us are." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and turned the words over in my head. "You'd already given enough." I didn't know what to do with that. I'd spent 5 years hating Erin too, hating her for the wedding, for the money, for the pink curtains and the easy way she'd always had it. I didn't know how to stop hating someone and feel sorry for them at the same time. That night, my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but the screen said unknown number, and something made me swipe. "Megan?" A woman's voice, thin and breathless, like she'd been walking fast. "It's me. It's Erin." I gripped the phone. "How did you get my number?" "Aunt Donna, don't be mad at her." I made her. There was a pause and I heard something in the background. A television maybe, or a machine beeping. "Megan, I told them not to call you. I swear to God, I told them not to. I knew they would, and I told them if they did I'd never forgive them, but they don't listen to me. They never listen to me. Erin, I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know that this wasn't my idea. Whatever they said, whatever they told you, I didn't—" She stopped, and I heard her take a shaky breath. "I didn't want this." I closed my eyes. 5 years of silence, and my sister's voice on the phone was still the voice I remembered, higher than Karen's, with a little rasp at the edges, the voice that used to whisper to me after the lights went out when we were kids. "Where are you?" I said. "I'm at home." "Dialysis day." "I'm tired. Erin, I need to think." "I know." That's all I wanted to say. "Think whatever you want, but don't let them make you feel guilty. You've given enough." She hung up. I sat in the dark with the phone pressed to my ear long after the line went dead, listening to the dial tone hum like a distant machine. We met at the Panera on Detroit Avenue, halfway between my apartment and the hospital, neutral ground. I got there 10 minutes early and sat in a booth by the window with a coffee I didn't drink, watching the parking lot. She came in alone, which I hadn't expected. I thought Karen would drive her, or Dennis, or both. But she walked in by herself in a puffer coat that was too big for her, and for a second I didn't recognize her. The Erin I remembered was round-faced and soft, the kind of girl who looked good in everything and knew it. The woman standing in the doorway of Panera was thin, almost gaunt, her skin pale with a yellowish undertone, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that showed the hollows under her cheekbones. She moved slowly, like every step cost something, and she carried a small canvas purse instead of the big designer bags she used to love. She saw me and stopped. Then she came over and slid into the booth across from me. "Hey," she said. "Hey." We looked at each other. Her eyes were the same, hazel, like mine, like our father's, but there were dark circles under them that makeup would have covered 5 years ago. She wasn't wearing any. "You look like Mom," she said. "You look like hell." She laughed, and it turned into a cough halfway through. A dry rattling sound that made the woman at the next table glance over. When she recovered, she said, "Yeah, well, kidney failure isn't a great look." I pushed my coffee toward her. She shook her head. "Can't, potassium." "Right, I knew that. I was a nurse. I knew what renal failure did to a body, the fluid retention, the potassium restrictions, the bone pain, the brain fog. I'd seen seen it in my patients. I just hadn't expected to see it across a booth from my sister. How bad is it? She said. How bad is what? Whatever they told you. The version of the story you got from Mom and Dad. I leaned back. They said you need a transplant. They said I should get tested. They didn't say much else. She nodded slowly, picking at a loose thread on her coat sleeve. I've been on the list since June. Deceased donor. The average wait in Ohio is 3 to 5 years. My numbers aren't great. My nephrologist says a living donor would be better, faster, but she stopped. But I told them not to ask you. I told them specifically not to call you. Erin, why didn't you call me yourself? 8 months ago, when you were diagnosed, she looked out the window. A minivan pulled into a parking space. Because I was ashamed. Because I knew what they did to you. The money, the backpack, all of it. I was 17, Megan. 17 and stupid and engaged to a guy who turned out to be a loser. And I let them give me your money because I was too selfish to say no. Her voice cracked. I've spent 5 years knowing that. Do you think I don't know? I didn't say anything. The truth was, I'd imagined this conversation 100 times. And in none of those versions did Erin cry into a Panera napkin, while I sat across from her feeling something I didn't want to feel. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said. I'm not asking you to donate. I wanted you to hear it from me. They're going to keep calling. They're going to say whatever they have to say to get what they want. That's what they do. And what do you want? She looked at me, and for a second I saw the old Erin, the one who got everything she wanted and knew it. I want to live, she said, and her voice was small and hard and honest all at once. I'm 21 years old and I want to live. Is that so terrible? No, it wasn't terrible. It was human. But it didn't answer the question of whether her wanting to live meant I had to give her a piece of my body. We sat for another 20 minutes. She told me about the dialysis, 3 times a week, 4 hours each time, the cramps, the exhaustion, the way she couldn't work anymore because she couldn't stand long enough. She told me Tyler had left after 6 months of marriage, saying he couldn't handle it. She told me she lived with Dennis and Karen, slept in her old room with the pink curtains, and spent most days watching TV because she didn't have the energy for anything else. When she stood up to leave, she steadied herself on the table, and I almost reached for her arm. Almost. Take care of yourself, I said. You too, Megan. She zipped up her coat. And for what it's worth, don't let them bully you. Whatever you decide, it's your decision. Not theirs. She walked out. I watched her through the window as she crossed the parking lot to an old sedan I didn't recognize, moving slowly in the cold October sun. That night, Aunt Donna sent me a screenshot. It was a public Facebook post from Karen's account, shared by 47 people, asking for prayers for my daughter Erin, who is fighting kidney failure. Her sister has been found and is a possible donor, but is refusing to even be tested. Please pray that her heart softens. A mother shouldn't have to bury one child while the other refuses to save her. I read it 3 times. I hadn't refused anything. I hadn't said yes or no. I'd said I needed to think, and somehow that had become refusing to save her sister. I stared at the words on the screen, and I thought about Erin in the Panera booth saying I want to live, and I thought about Karen writing her mother shouldn't have to bury one child, and I realized that in this family, the truth had never mattered. Only the story did. I drove to Ridgemont on my day off. The town looked smaller than I remembered. The factory on Route 20 still boarded up. The diner with a new sign but the same cracked parking lot. The high school football field where the bleachers had rusted through. Aunt Donna lived in a double wide on the south side of town. The one with the flower beds made from old tires painted white. She met me at the door with a cigarette in one hand and a hug that smelled like lavender and smoke. Come in. Coffee's on. Her kitchen was clean and cluttered. Magnets on the fridge, a jar of pickles on the counter, a chihuahua named Taco who barked at me for 5 minutes before falling asleep in my lap. She poured coffee and sat down across from me with a manila folder. I've been saving this, she said. I don't know why. Maybe I always knew you'd come asking. It was the wedding. She had the receipts, because Karen had asked her to help pay for the flowers, and Donna had written a check, which meant she'd seen the budget. The dress, $3,500. The venue, the VFW hall with the catered buffet and the DJ, $4,000. The rings, $2,000. The cake, the invitations, the limo, the photographer, the hair and makeup, the rehearsal dinner at the Italian place on Main Street. It added up to $12,000, almost to the penny. Your money, Donna said, tapping the folder. Every cent. Karen showed me the bank slip. I said, Karen, that girl worked for that money. That's her nursing school. She said, Erin needs it more. Megan's strong enough to earn more. I sat there with Taco warm on my lap and looked at the receipts. The dress was from a shop in Beechwood. The rings were from a jeweler in Mentor. The limo was a white Hummer, which was so perfectly Erin that I almost laughed. There's more, Donna said. She pulled out her phone and showed me a GoFundMe page. Prayers for Erin Sullivan. Started 8 months ago, when Erin was diagnosed. Goal, $20,000. Raised, $18,200 and change. Where did it go? Some of it paid for medical bills, co-pays, transportation to dialysis, that kind of thing. But your father bought a new truck in June. Used Ford, $1,500 down. And Karen got that new television for the living room, the 70-incher, $600. There's more. Restaurant meals, new clothes, a weekend in Niagara Falls they took in September to get their minds off things. I stared at her. They raised money for a sick kid and spent it on a truck and a TV. Welcome to the family. Honey. I drove back to Cleveland with the folder on the passenger seat and a cold feeling in my stomach that wasn't anger exactly. It was calculation. I was a nurse. I knew how to assess a situation, and I was assessing this one the way I'd assess a patient. Vitals, history, symptoms, prognosis. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started researching living kidney donation. I read medical journals. I read donor blogs. I read the Cleveland Clinic's patient information twice. The surgery was laparoscopic, usually 2 to 4 nights in the hospital. Recovery was 4 to 6 weeks before you could go back to full duty. No lifting, no standing for long shifts, no 12-hour nights on a pediatric ward. There were risks: bleeding, infection, hernia, reactions to anesthesia. Long-term, most donors live normal lives, but there was a small increased risk of high blood pressure and pregnancy complications. Then I did the math that Tasha and I finished together when she got home from her shift. I had 2 weeks of PTO saved. Short-term disability through the hospital covered 60% of my salary for up to 12 weeks, but it didn't start for 7 days. If I donated, I'd be out for at least 4 weeks, maybe 6. At 60% pay, after my health insurance premium and my student loan payment and rent and utilities, I'd be short about $800 a month. I had $6,000 in savings. It would cover it, barely, but if there were complications, if I needed more time, if I got an infection, I'd be wiped out. You can't afford this, Tasha said, leaning over my shoulder. Not just the money. Your body, your career. You worked too hard for this. I know. And for what? People who took your college money and called you selfish for wanting it back? I closed the laptop. I know, Tasha. But knowing and deciding were 2 different things. I went to bed at midnight and slept for 3 hours before my phone rang. It was Karen. Her voice was raw, panicked, loud. Megan, she's in the ICU. They transferred her to Cleveland Clinic. Her blood pressure crashed and they put her on a pressor. You need to get here. You need to see her. Please. I sat up in the dark. When? Now, Megan. Right now. If you want to see her alive, get in your car now. The line went dead. I sat there for 10 seconds. Then I got dressed. The Cleveland Clinic at 2 in the morning is a city that never sleeps. The parking garage was half full. The lobby bright as daytime. The elevators full of nurses and scrubs and families with red eyes and overnight bags. I took the elevator to the ICU, my heart doing something I didn't like in my chest. Karen was in the waiting room, alone, hunched in a plastic chair with a cup of vending machine coffee. When she saw me, she stood up and reached for me, and I stepped back. She let her arms drop. Where is she? Room 12. They stabilized her, but she's... Karen's face crumpled. She looks bad, Megan. I didn't wait for her to finish. I walked down the hall to room 12 and stopped in the doorway. Erin was in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines, an IV in each arm, a monitor tracing her heart rate in green lines, a catheter, oxygen cannula in her nose. Her face was puffy with fluid retention, her lips cracked, her skin the color of old paper. A nurse was checking her vitals, writing on a chart. I'd seen sicker patients. I'd seen kids in the PICU who looked worse than this. But this was different. This was the girl who used to steal my sweaters and sing off-key in the shower and call me Meg when she wanted something. This was my sister. The nurse noticed me. Family? I'm her sister. She's stable for now. BP's still low, but the pressor is helping. You can sit with her, but keep it quiet. I pulled a chair to the bed and sat down. Erin's hand was on top of the sheet, and I looked at it. Puffy, pale, with chipped pink nail polish. I didn't hold it. I just sat there and watched her breathe, the ventilator whooshing, the monitor beeping its steady rhythm. Karen came in after a while and stood on the other side of the bed. Dennis wasn't there. He'd stayed in Ridgemont with the truck, Karen said, because someone had to work. We didn't speak. We stood on opposite sides of our sister's bed like 2 strangers sharing a bus stop. In the morning, a woman came to the waiting room looking for me. She was in her 40s, with short dark hair and a navy blazer over scrubs, carrying a clipboard. Megan Sullivan? I'm Maria Gonzalez, transplant coordinator. I understand you're a potential living donor for Erin Sullivan. I stood up. We shook hands. Her grip was firm. Can we talk? Privately? She took me to a small office down the hall. Desk, 2 chairs, a window that looked out at the parking garage. She closed the door and sat across from me. I need to explain how this works, she said. Living kidney donation is completely voluntary. You can say no at any time, for any reason, and no one, including your family, has the right to pressure you. The evaluation process includes blood tests, imaging, a psychological evaluation, and an independent donor advocate whose job is to protect your interests, not Erin's. She opened the folder on her desk. I also need to tell you something. When Erin was listed for transplant, she signed a form specifically requesting that we not solicit family members for donation. She listed you and your parents, and she checked the box next to each name that said, "Do not contact." I stared at her. She didn't want you to call me. She explicitly asked us not to. Your parents called you on their own. They don't have access to Erin's medical decision-making. She's an adult, and they can't authorize or request donor testing on her behalf. Does she know they called me? She does now. She found out yesterday, before she was admitted. She was upset. Maria paused. Megan, I have to ask you this directly, and I need you to answer honestly. Do you feel pressured to donate? I thought about Karen's Facebook post. I thought about Dennis's voicemail. I thought about 14 missed calls and a GoFundMe page and a wedding dress that cost $3,500. I feel a lot of things, I said, but I don't know if pressured is the right word. Take your time. There's no rush. Erin's stable and the deceased donor list is still active. If you want to be tested, we can start the process. If you don't, that's completely your right. Either way, I want you to talk to the independent advocate before you decide anything. I nodded. She gave me her card and walked me to the elevator. I went back to Erin's room. Karen had gone to the cafeteria, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I was alone with my sister. I sat in the chair and watched her breathe. After about 10 minutes, her eyes fluttered open. They were glassy, unfocused at first, and then they found me. "You came," she said. Her voice was a dry whisper. "I came." She stared at me for a long time. The monitor beeped. Somewhere in the hall, a cart rattled. "I need to tell you about the backpack," she said. I leaned forward. "What about it?" "The night you left. The backpack you took. I packed it." Her eyes were wet. I was 16. I couldn't stop them, but I packed it. I put in your gray hoodie, the one with the stain on the cuff that you loved anyway, and your charger, and $47. It was all the babysitting money I had. I couldn't breathe. "I've carried that for 5 years, she said. "I'm sorry, Megan. I'm so sorry." The monitor beeped. The ventilator whooshed, and I sat there with my sister's hand finally in mine, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Not anger, not forgiveness, but something between the two, alive and complicated and real. Erin fell asleep after that, the medication pulling her under. I sat with her for another hour, holding her puffy hand, and then I went to the family waiting room because I needed to think, and I couldn't think in that room with the machines. The waiting room was empty, except for a man asleep in the corner with his coat over his face. I sat by the window and watched the sun come up over Cleveland, gray and cold over the lake, and I thought about a 16-year-old girl packing a backpack in the middle of the night. I'd always assumed Karen had packed it, or that I'd packed it myself in a blur. I never questioned it, but it made sense. The gray hoodie, which I'd thought I grabbed myself but couldn't actually remember. The phone charger, which I wouldn't have thought to bring because I was 18 and stupid, and thought I'd be back in a day or two. The $47. Which I'd assumed was leftover pizza money. Erin had done it. 16 years old, too scared to stand up to Dennis and Karen, but brave enough to sneak into my room while they were watching TV and put $47 in a backpack. I didn't know what to do with that. I'd spent 5 years building a wall between me and this family, brick by brick, the first-name basis with my mother, the blocked numbers, the refusal to go home for holidays, the way I'd trained myself not to think about Erin because thinking about her led to thinking about the money, which led to standing in a bank lobby at 18 while Mrs. Patterson looked at me with pity. And now Erin had handed me a crack in the wall, and I didn't know whether to seal it or let it grow. Karen found me in the waiting room. She sat down next to me with her coffee, close, like we were the kind of mother and daughter who sat close. "Did you talk to the coordinator?" She said. "I did. Are you going to get tested?" "I don't know yet." Her face tightened. "Megan, your sister is in there." "I know where she is, Karen. I was just sitting with her." "Then how can you?" "Because I'm a person, not an organ bank. I get to decide what happens to my body." She stood up. Her coffee sloshed in the cup. "I don't know where I went wrong with you," she said, and walked out. I went home at noon and slept until 6. When I woke up, I had 32 text messages from numbers I didn't know. They'd found me. Karen's Facebook post had been shared in a Ridgemont community group, then in a church group, then in a larger Cleveland area parents group. The comments were what you'd expect. How could she? That poor girl. Some people shouldn't be sisters. I'd report her to her job. A nurse who won't save her own sister? Disgusting. One message was from a woman who said she went to my church. I didn't go to church, and that she'd be praying for my soul. Another was from a man who called me a murderer and hoped I lost my nursing license. I deleted them all and blocked the numbers, but they kept coming. Tasha came over with Chinese food and read the posts over my shoulder while I ate. "This is insane," she said. "They're literally cyberbullying you into surgery." "I know. You need to tell the hospital. If this affects your job, the hospital doesn't care about Facebook posts, Tasha." But the hospital did care when someone called the unit. My manager, Brenda, pulled me aside on Wednesday night before my shift. She was a woman in her 50s who'd been a nurse for 30 years and didn't take crap from anyone, and her face was carefully neutral when she said, "Megan, someone called the unit yesterday asking about you. They said you were refusing to donate a kidney to your dying sister and asked if that was the kind of person we wanted working with children." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What did you say?" I told them patient and family medical decisions are private, and that if they called again, I'd report them for harassment. "But I wanted you to know." She paused. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. You don't have to be fine. You can have whatever feelings you're having. But if this affects your work, you tell me. That's what I'm here for." I nodded and went to my shift. I took vitals and administered meds and smiled at parents and held a toddler while the doctor put in an IV. And I did my job the way I always did. Competently, calmly, because the kids didn't deserve anything less. But in the back of my mind, I kept seeing Erin's face in the hospital bed and Karen's Facebook post and the $47 in a backpack. At 3 in the morning, during my break, I sat in the break room and pulled out my phone. I called Maria Gonzalez. "I want to get tested," I said. There was a pause. "Megan, have you had a chance to think about why?" "I've thought about nothing else. I'm not doing it because of the posts. I'm not doing it because my parents pressured me. I'm doing it because I need to know. If I'm a match, I want that information. And then I want to make my decision with all the facts. Not with fear." Maria was quiet for a moment. "That's a reasonable position," she said. "I'll schedule the blood work for this week." I hung up and went back to my patients. My hands were steady. The blood work took 10 minutes. A needle in my arm, 4 vials of blood, a bandage and a lollipop from the phlebotomist who said she loved my dinosaur scrubs. Then came the imaging, a CT scan of my abdomen to map my kidney kidneys and blood vessels, and the EKG and the urine tests and the 2-hour psychological evaluation with a woman named Dr. Abramson, who asked me more questions about my parents than about my medical history. Do you feel that donating would be a way to earn their love? She asked. No, I said. Then I thought about it. Maybe. I don't know. I know it won't. I know they'll find something else to ask for. But that's not why I'm here. Why are you here? Because my sister is sick, and I might be able to help, and I need to make that decision with facts instead of feelings. If I say no, I want it to be my no. If I say yes, I want it to be my yes. I don't want it to be my mother's Facebook post or my father's guilt trip or some stranger's voicemail. She wrote that down. That's a healthy answer, she said. The results would take 2 weeks. I went back to work and tried to live my life while my blood was being analyzed in a lab somewhere. Tasha didn't approve. I could tell by the way she sighed when I told her, but she didn't argue. She just said, "You're the most hard-headed person I've ever met," and left it at that. Aaron was released from the ICU after 4 days and moved to a step-down unit, then back home to Ridgemont with strict instructions and a follow-up schedule. She texted me once, "Thanks for coming to the hospital. Don't do anything you don't want to do." I texted back, "Rest. We'll talk later." Dennis and Karen showed up at my apartment on a Saturday afternoon. I knew it was them because I looked out the window and saw Dennis's truck, the new used Ford, the one GoFundMe had helped pay for, parked across the street. Karen got out first, then Dennis, and they stood on the sidewalk looking up at my building like they were trying to figure out which apartment was mine. I didn't go down. I stood behind my curtain and watched. Dennis found the buzzer. He pressed it. I didn't answer. He pressed it again, longer this time, and then I heard his voice through the intercom, muffled but clear enough. "Megan, we know you're up there. Open the door." I picked up my phone and called the Lakewood Police non-emergency line. I told them there were people at my building who wouldn't leave, that I felt harassed, and I asked for an officer to document it. The dispatcher said someone would be by. Down on the sidewalk, Karen was crying. Dennis had his hands on his hips, looking up at the windows. A neighbor walked past and stared. After about 10 minutes, a cruiser pulled up and an officer got out. I watched through the curtain as the officer talked to them, gesturing, as Dennis's shoulders slumped, and Karen wiped her eyes. They got back in the truck and left. The officer came to my door afterward, a young woman with a ponytail and a notebook. She took my statement, wrote down the license plate number, and gave me a case number. "If they come back, call us immediately," she said. "You did the right thing." After she left, I sat down on my couch, and my hands were shaking, but it wasn't the shaking from the night Karen called. It was something else. Adrenaline, maybe, or relief. I'd said no to them, really said no, with a locked door and a police report, and the world hadn't ended. The 2 weeks crawled. I worked, I slept, I talked to Aaron on the phone a few times. Short conversations, careful, like we were learning a new language. She told me about dialysis, about the nurses at the clinic, about a book she was reading. I told her about my patients, about Tasha, about the way the radiators in my apartment sounded like they were having an argument. We didn't talk about the kidney. We didn't talk about the money. We just talked, and it was the strangest thing. Talking to my sister like she was a person I was getting to know instead of a character in a story I'd been telling myself for 5 years. On the 14th day, Maria Gonzalez called. I was in the hospital break room, eating a sad vending machine granola bar before my shift. When I saw her name on the screen, I stepped into the hallway. "Megan," she said. "The results are in." I leaned against the wall. "And? You're a match. Blood type O positive. 6 antigen match with your sister. That's about as good as it gets for a living donor. Medically, you're an excellent candidate." I closed my eyes. The hallway hummed around me. A call light beeped. A doctor laughed. A stretcher rattled past. "Megan, are you there?" "I'm here. I know this is a lot to process. You don't have to decide today. Take the weekend. Talk to your donor advocate. Talk to people you trust. And remember, you can still say no. The match doesn't obligate you." I know. We hung up. I stood in the hallway for a long time, holding my phone, while the hospital moved around me like a river. I was a match. My sister's body would accept my kidney. The science was clean and simple. The rest of it wasn't. I went back to my shift. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet, I told Tasha that night. She was sitting on my couch painting her toenails, and I said, "I'm a match." And she didn't look up. "I know," she said. "You knew? How did you know?" "Because I know you. You've had that look on your face for 2 weeks. The I'm figuring something out look." She screwed the nail polish shut and looked at me. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Being a match doesn't mean you owe them your kidney, Megan. It means your biology is compatible. That's it. Compatibility isn't obligation. I know that here." I tapped my head. "Here, I know it." But what?" "But she's my sister." Tasha was quiet for a minute. "I can't make this decision for you. Nobody can. But I'll tell you what I see. I see a woman who works 12-hour nights taking care of sick kids and then comes home and worries about everyone but herself. I see a woman who was thrown away at 18 and built a life out of nothing, and now the people who threw her away want one more thing. And I see that woman considering giving it to them because she doesn't know how to stop being the strong one." I didn't say anything. She was right, and we both knew it. The next day I drove to the clinic in Ridgemont where Aaron did dialysis. I waited in the parking lot until she came out, thin and tired. carrying a small pillow she used for the needle site. She got in my car without asking where we were going. I drove to a park on the east side, the one with the pond where we used to feed ducks when we were kids. It was November now, cold and gray, the trees bare. We sat on a bench with our coats zipped up. "I'm a match," I said. Erin didn't move. She stared at the pond, where a few ducks were paddling in circles. "No," she said. "Erin, no, Megan. I'm not taking your kidney. You haven't heard what I don't need to hear it. I know what the surgery involves. I know the recovery time. I know what you make and what your rent costs and how much you have in savings because I'm not stupid and I pay attention." She turned to look at me, and her eyes were fierce, the way they used to be when she was a kid and someone tried to tell her what to do. "They took your childhood. They took your money. They took 5 years of your life. I'm not taking a kidney too. You could die waiting for a deceased donor. Then I die. But I don't die with one more thing taken from you on my conscience." I stared at her. This wasn't the Erin I'd expected. The one who'd say please. The one who'd cry and call me strong. This was someone new. Someone who'd had 8 months of sitting in a dialysis chair with nothing to do but think, and she'd thought her way to a decision I hadn't seen coming. "Erin, if I donate, it's my choice. Not theirs. Mine. I know it is. And I'm making my choice too. I'm saying no." She pulled her coat tighter. "You want to be my sister? Then be my sister. Call me. Text me. Come sit with me during dialysis. But don't give me a kidney because you think that's what sisters do. Sisters don't let each other get carved up for people who don't deserve it." We sat on that bench for a long time. The ducks paddled. The wind moved through the bare branches. Somewhere a dog barked. "Okay," I said finally. "Okay, I won't donate." Erin let out a breath, like she'd been holding it for 5 years. "Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you." "Well, I am. But I'm also doing it for me." She almost smiled. "That's the most Megan thing you've ever said." I drove her back to the clinic parking lot. Before she got out, she said, "They're not going to let this go, you know. Mom and Dad, they're going to push. I know. They might come to Cleveland. Let them." She looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded and got out of the car. That night, Karen texted me. It was the first direct message she'd sent since the ICU, and it was short. "Your father and I are coming to Cleveland tomorrow. We'll all sit down and talk like a family. This ends one way or another." I stared at the message. Then I texted Erin, "They're coming tomorrow." Erin wrote back immediately, "I'll be there. Donna's driving me." I texted Tasha, "Can you be at my apartment tomorrow? I need a witness. Tasha, I'll bring beer." I put my phone down and went to bed. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. They showed up at 2 o'clock on Sunday. Dennis in his good flannel shirt, Karen in a pantsuit she'd probably worn to a funeral once. They stood on my doorstep with their hands folded, and for a second they looked like any older couple coming to visit their daughter. Then I saw Dennis's jaw set and Karen's eyes red, and I remembered. I let them in. Tasha was in the bedroom with the door open, out of sight but within earshot. Erin was already there, sitting on my couch in her puffer coat, looking small and tired but upright. Aunt Donna had dropped her off an hour earlier and waited in the car outside. "This is your fight," she'd said. But I'm not leaving the parking lot. Dennis and Karen came in and saw Erin on the couch. Karen's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, confusion, then a tight smile. "Erin, honey, what are you doing here?" "I live here," Erin said. "Well, not here, but I'm part of this. This is about me." "Of course it's about you," Dennis said. He sat in the armchair like he was settling in for a negotiation. Karen sat next to Erin on the couch, but Erin shifted an inch away. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "You wanted to talk." "Talk." Dennis cleared his throat. "The test came back positive. You're a match. The coordinator called us. The coordinator didn't call you. You called her, and she told you the same thing she told me. It's my decision. Your decision is to let your sister die." Karen's voice cracked on the last word. "My decision is not to have surgery for people who threw me out of the house at 18 and took $12,000 from me. That money went to your sister's wedding. It went to a dress and a Hummer limousine and a ring from a jeweler and mentor. I've seen the receipts, Karen. Aunt Donna kept them." Karen's mouth opened and closed. Dennis's face got darker. "That's in the past," he said. "We're talking about now. Erin is sick. She needs a kidney. You can give her one and live a normal life. The doctors said so. The doctor said there are risks. The doctor said I'd be out of work for 6 weeks. The doctor said it's my choice, and I've made it." "No." Dennis stood up. He wasn't a tall man, but he had presence. The kind of presence that had made me shrink when I was a kid. "You don't get to make this choice. You're her sister. I'm her sister, not her property. God gave you that kidney for a reason." "Oh, don't you dare bring God into this." My voice was low and steady, and I was proud of that. God didn't give me anything. I was born with 2 kidneys, same as everyone else. One of them is mine. The other one is also mine. I get to decide what happens to both of them. Karen started crying. It was the kind of crying that had always worked on me when I was little. Loud, gasping, her whole body shaking. I watched her cry, and I felt nothing move in me. That was when I knew. "After everything we did for you," she sobbed. "After we raised you and fed you and clothed you. You raised me until I was 18, and then you put me out with a backpack. You didn't call me for 5 years. You posted on Facebook that I was letting my sister die before I'd even made a decision. You called my job. You showed up at my apartment and I had to call the police." Dennis took a step toward me. "Now you listen." "No, it wasn't me who said it. It was Erin." We all looked at her. She was still sitting on the couch, small in her puffer coat, her hands folded in her lap, but her voice was clear. "Dad, sit down." Dennis stared at her. "Erin, this doesn't it concerns me more than anyone. I'm the one on dialysis. I'm the one waiting for a kidney. And I'm telling you, I don't want Megan's." The room went quiet. The radiators clanked. Outside, a car door slammed. "What?" Karen whispered. I told them not to call her. I told the hospital not to contact any family member. I told both of you repeatedly not to do this. And you did it anyway. You took her money, you took 5 years of her life, and now you want her kidney. I'm not going to be the reason you take one more thing from her. She's your sister, Dennis started. She is my sister. That's why I'm saying no. If you can't understand that, then you don't understand what family is. Erin stood up. She was unsteady on her feet, but she stood. Megan said no. I said no. That's the end of it. If you keep pushing, if you post one more thing online, if you call her job again, I will sign myself off the family health insurance and go on Medicaid by myself, and you'll never see me again. Do you understand? Dennis looked like she'd hit him. Karen's crying had stopped, and she was staring at Erin like she'd never seen her before. You'd choose her over us? Karen said. I'm not choosing anyone. I'm choosing what's right. Erin looked at me, then back at them. You should leave. They didn't move for a long time. Then Dennis picked up his coat from the chair. He walked to the door without looking at any of us. Karen followed, but in the doorway she stopped and turned to me. I don't know what I did to make you hate me so much, she said. You didn't make me hate you, I said. You made me take care of myself. There's a difference. She left. The door closed. We heard their truck start in the parking lot and drive away. For a minute, nobody said anything. Then Tasha emerged from the bedroom with 3 beers from my fridge, opened them on the counter, and handed them around without a word. Erin sat down next to me on the couch. She leaned her head on my shoulder, the way she used to when she was little, and she'd had a bad dream. I put my arm around her. Tasha sat in the armchair and drank her beer and didn't say anything. Outside, the November sun went down over Lakewood, and the streetlights came on. And for the first time in a long time, the apartment was quiet in a good way. 14 months later, Erin got the call. It was a Tuesday in January, snow coming down off the lake in thick white sheets, and a kidney had become available through a paired donation chain. A woman in Houston had donated to a recipient there, and her recipient's donor had donated to someone else, and the chain had run through 5 states and 12 people before it reached a kidney that matched Erin in Cleveland. I was at work when she texted me. They found one. I'm going in. I handed off my patients, told Brenda I had a family emergency, and drove to the clinic in the snow. Tasha met me there with dry socks and a coffee, because she was Tasha and she thought of everything. The surgery took 4 hours. We waited in the surgical lounge. Me, Tasha, Aunt Donna, and, on the other side of the room, Dennis and Karen. They'd driven up from Ridgemont that morning. Karen tried to catch my eye once, but I didn't look away, and she did. We sat in the same room for 4 hours without speaking, and that was fine. Some distances don't close. The surgeon came out at 3 in the afternoon and said the kidney had perfused on the table, turned pink right away, started making urine within minutes. Erin was in recovery, stable, the new kidney already working. Aunt Donna cried. Tasha squeezed my hand. Across the room, Karen put her face in her hands and Dennis stared at the floor. I didn't feel the rush I'd expected. I felt something quieter. Relief, maybe. Or just tiredness. The good kind. The kind that comes after something long and hard is finally over. Erin recovered faster than anyone expected. The new kidney worked from day 1. Her creatinine dropped. The color came back to her face within a week. I was there when she woke up, and she looked at me with clear eyes. No puffiness, no yellow tint, and said, I have to pee so bad, and I laughed so hard I cried. Dennis and Karen came to the hospital every day during her recovery. They brought food and sat by her bed and talked to her in soft voices. They didn't talk to me. I didn't talk to them. We existed in the same orbit without colliding. 2 planets around the same sun, and that was enough. Erin moved to Cleveland in March. She got a small apartment in Lakewood, 10 minutes from mine, and took a job at a front desk while she took classes online. She and Tyler were officially divorced. She started therapy. She gained 15 pounds and bought herself a winter coat that fit and learned to cook 3 things without burning them. We had dinner together once a week, usually at my place because her kitchen was smaller. We didn't talk about the old days much. We talked about her classes, my patients, Tasha's dating life, the way the radiators in both our apartments sounded like they were dying. I started the part-time master's program at Case Western in the fall. Nursing education, the thing I'd been thinking about since I was a student and hadn't let myself want because it cost money and took time and I was too busy surviving. I had savings now. Not a lot, but enough. I was going to be a nurse practitioner one day, and I was going to teach nursing students, and nobody was going to take that from me because nobody had given it to me. I still had the backpack. It was in the back of my closet, gray and worn, the zipper broken on one side. I'd kept it through every move. 5 apartments in 5 years. Couch surfing. A roommate situation that ended badly. And finally the brick building in Lakewood. I'd never gone through the pockets. I don't know why. Maybe because I already knew what was in them. Nothing, probably. Maybe because I was afraid of what I'd feel. One Sunday in October, almost exactly a year after Karen's call, I pulled it out and sat on the floor of my bedroom and opened it. The gray hoodie was there, folded at the bottom, the stain on the cuff still visible. The phone charger was in the side pocket, obsolete now, the kind with the wide old connector. I reached into the inner pocket and pulled out a folded piece of notebook paper. It was Erin's handwriting, 16 years old and round, in purple gel pen. Meg, I'm sorry. I tried to stop them, but I can't. Don't be mad. You're going to be okay because you're the strongest person I know. I love you even when you're mad at me. I sat on the floor for a long time with that note in my hand. Then I put it back in the pocket, zipped the backpack up, and put it back in the closet. Not because I was hiding it, because it belonged there. It was part of the story, and the story was mine now. That afternoon, Erin and I walked in the park by the lake. The leaves were turning red and gold, and the air off the water was sharp and clean. She was wearing her new coat, and her cheeks were pink from the cold, and she looked like a person who was going to live. I never said thank you, she said, after we'd been walking for a while. For what? For saying no. For making me figure out that I could ask for help without taking everything from you. She kicked a leaf. For being my sister. The real kind, not the kind they wanted us to be. I thought about it. I didn't say no just for you, I know. You said it for you too. That's why it worked. We kept walking. The lake was gray and vast, and the wind moved through the trees, and somewhere a dog was barking. I thought about the girl who'd walked out of a house in Ridgemont with a backpack and $47, and I thought about the woman walking next to me in a coat that fit, and I thought about how they were the same person, and not the same person at all. I didn't forgive my parents. Not yet, maybe not ever. Forgiveness was a big word, and I didn't trust big words anymore, but I didn't hate them either. They were who they were. Two people who'd had a child who was strong, and a child who needed taking care of, and they'd chosen the easier story because the harder one was too much for them. I couldn't change that. I could only decide not to live inside it. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text from Tasha. Wine tonight? Don't make me drink alone. I smiled and typed back. Be there in 20. Erin looked over my shoulder. Tell her I'm coming. You're always coming. That's because your friends are cooler than my friends. We turned and walked back toward the apartments, our boots crunching on the gravel path, our breath visible in the October air. I didn't check my phone for missed calls from Ridgemont. I didn't wonder if Karen was sorry, or if Dennis would ever say the words. I just walked next to my sister, with the lake wind in our faces and the leaves falling around us, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for anything. I was already there.